Hello YouTube, program review today, and we're working on Montana's regimen, and it's a short one, so it should be in one part only, and we're going to see if something that is going to be scheduled on such a tight budget can be effective or not. One thing that I noticed about this program is that he has an upper-lower template, but he tends to prioritize movement pattern selection and appellations in a sense for his lower bodies, which is something I do personally across the board, where if you follow the way I program with my gentleman split, I'll have a day that's an upper day, but it's an upper day focused on bench, which also means it's focused on chest, and it's focused on an horizontal press. And then beyond that, the overarching theme is going to be a body part split. So it's a convoluted way to think about it because technically it's a body part split, but I like to implement it because it shows you the steps you're going to have to take in terms of exercise selection and in terms of muscle group focus. So for him, you'll see that he does that for his lower body. The upper bodies are just called upper. So we're going to see how this is programmed. It has two uppers and only one lower. So that is, of course, skewed towards upper body, but not as much as you might think, because of course you move much more weight when you do your lower body. That being said, this means that he trains only 3 times per week technically, or at least that is if and only if I don't misconstrue a paragraph as being one sentence only. So actually the Friday is also a lower, so it's an upper lower, which is very classic. I would encourage people to not let themselves be stuck in that template of 2 days upper, 2 days lower. Yes, it's a consensus that it's a good template, but you can up the frequency. You can do 5 days, you can do 6 days, you can add an arm day, you can modify the upper lower to be a gentleman split. It makes adding tonnage and working every single muscle group much easier. But let's see what Montana does with his approach, because he trains Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, which is like super orthodox in terms of approach. So on Monday, upper, he starts with flat bench, a 3x3. In terms of static rep range, you've heard me say it, a 3x3 is one of my favorite because it's one of the least sandbaggy in a sense, where you're still going to really push yourself to exertion and the intensity is very high. So that's really good. And the good thing with the 3x3 too is that it can really be applied to anything for strength work. It's going to work for bench, it's going to work for squat, for deadlift. It's amazing for deadlift. I would say that for things like the overhead press, it sort of lacks the volume that I like to see personally. It can be used as a progressing scheme only if you want to push the intensity on a certain day of the week and then have more volume on the other day. Other lifts, especially the variations and what I consider to be the main bread earners in terms of tonnage that are going to come after the strength work, shouldn't really be ran in 3x3s. Back of sets can be run in 3x3s, it's a good rep scheme for that, but stuff like rows, Romanian deadlift, you need to forget that. Pull-ups can actually be run 3x3 too. So flat bench 3x3, okay, very good. And that's a perfect opener for an upper. The bench is a very good movement. Bench, dips, weighted push-ups. After that, weighted pull-ups, 3x3. Just as I said, the weighted pull-ups work amazingly for the 3x3. And of course, only if you do them weighted. If you do them calisthenic style with only body weight, do as many as you can. And here, the weighted pull-up could potentially be supersetted with the flat bench, but because they are both strength work parameters, it's perfectly fine to separate them entirely. So, plus it's only 3 sets. So it's not like you're going to lose a lot of time, because keep in mind that the more sets you do, the more beneficial it is to superset them. Because if you're going to do 4 sets of one thing and then 4 sets of the other, if you slap them together, you manage to put in the bank 4 sets in terms of time. Here, it would only make you gain 3 sets, and it's 3 sets worth 3 reps. So you have to look at that too in terms of time economy. So far so good, excellent. Then he does flat bench again, 3 sets of 8 to 12. So that's a back-off set, technically, that is lagging in terms of set distribution because it's not right after the flat bench. And this has its benefits and its disadvantages, because in terms of benefits, you're going to have time to recover a bit, so you'll be a little bit fresher, you'll be able to put in more efforts. You might have to go through another warm-up phase. Some people might actually need that, but since the weighted pull-ups will take you so little time, it actually shouldn't be the case. You might need to just readapt a little bit neurologically, so maybe just do one set to get used to it again, but again, that might not be necessary. And I personally like it. I do think, however, that with a 3x3, doing a 3 sets of 8 to 12, which is an evolving rep range, might be a little bit high in terms of volume. So I would highly encourage you, Montana, to actually try and do a variation here. You can do a spotter press, you can do a close grip bench, you can do all sorts of incline press if you want, if that's something you like, to avoid overuse injuries. I sometimes would recommend post bench, but I think that post bench for 8 to 12 starts to be a little bit high and it doesn't really fit with the tempo and the mentality attached to a post rep. Then he does weighted pull-ups. So again, another back-off set that is deferred in the program, 3 sets of 8 to 12. So that's highly minimalistic in nature. It's the repetition of the same movement. And it's a compound movement that is time-tested and proven to put on muscle, but don't get stuck in the mentality of repeating the same thing again and again. Because at some point that approach fails, and when it fails you, it's too easy to just be completely stubborn and just stick at it. You can prevent the issues from happening, especially in terms of tendonitis and overuse injuries, if you already program a variation. So what I would highly recommend you is maybe don't do them weighted. Maybe do them in the sternum style, where you try to touch the sternum and you actually lean back, which turns the movement much more into an horizontal pull pattern. That's going to work your upper back more and you will feel it much more. You can modify the grip if you want it. All of these would be beneficial. If you really want to work the upper back on that day, I actually do think that with the way the program is set up, a row on that day would work. A seal row, a normal row, a pendlay row, they all would work. But repeating the same pull-up bench again and again eventually has its limits. Because after that, I see that you do a bunch of movements that could be considered isolation or pump style. So you do chest supported machine high row, you do lateral raises, you do overhead tricep extension, and you do cable curls. I'm not saying to not do those movements, of course, and they are all very important because they train different muscles. But you will find that if you do what I told you to do, you're going to be able to superset those things. Because if you keep the flat bench and the weighted pull-ups, technically, yeah, they're back-off sets, but because you're repeating the same movement that you've already done with intensity, the possibility of you to actually slap a superset to them is going to be limited because your ability to be effective on these movements is already damaged. So I would encourage you to go with variations for these two. And you'll find that across the board, yes, it won't be as specific. You'll lose in specificity, but you will gain in row progression and in injury prevention. So I say that because I would like to rearrange the day. I would like you to do your flat bench back-off set as a variation that you can then superset with maybe the chest supported high row or the cable curls. They would both work really well with that movement. And then the weighted pull-up back-off set, which again needs to be a variation, can easily be supersetted with lateral raises and overhead tricep extension. That way you have your first two sets of strength work, the bench and the pull-up, and after that you have your back-off set for the horizontal press that is going to be supersetted with a curl and a row, and then you have your back-off set of the vertical press that is going to be supersetted with a tricep extension and a lateral raise. And I think that this solidifies your program, it's going to save you time, and it's going to also help you increase your cardiovascular endurance. Because I don't know how you made it work, but let's say you want to stick with your method. I want you to make a giant set with the high rows, the lateral raises, the tricep extension, and the cable curls. They all work different muscles. They will not damage progression and your ability to perform. So try and create something like this. If you don't want to follow my approach, do it the way I just said. Make a giant set. Tuesday, which he calls lower knee flexion base. So it's the knee flexion base. It's important to distinguish because for me, for example, out of my 4 lower body days in my program, only one is knee flexion based. The rest are all hip hinges. Why? Because I prioritize the hamstring growth and not the quads. For him, he prioritized quads because if you do extra knee flexions, it means that what gets the brunt of the work is the quads. So he starts with post squat, 3x3. Okay, amazing rep range for the squat. I love post squats. Understand with post squats that you're going to limit yourself in terms of progression because you're weaker on post squats across the board for many reasons that I will explain in a video dedicated to post reps. But I'm not a big fan of opening your training with this. I don't know if it's because you can only squat if you pose. I know a lot of people like this that lose balance if they do a normal squat, which is with the stretch reflex at the bottom and a touch and go, quote unquote. I would encourage you to train your ability to squat normally because you will see that it really increases the ability to push progression. Especially since I see that you follow that with a back off set, so you tend to have a system of minimalistic repetition of strength work, which I personally try to avoid as much as I can. If you can get away with it, do it. I can get away with it personally with the deadlift, but it does create more problems than it solves. And I understand the need for specificity, but understand that any lift with a similar movement pattern, with a similar style and stance, still feeds into that lift. You're still within a very close range of specificity. So I would encourage you to start with a normal squat that you can do in a 3x3 and then do your post squats. You do your post squats in an 8 to 12 rep range, which is masochistic. If you can handle it, by all means, it does. If you lift a decent amount and you go to failure, this is going to be extremely taxing on your cardiovascular system. If you can handle it, by all means, I personally recommend people who want to do post squats to do them in a 4 to 8 rep range. That's what I do personally. But post squats for people who want big legs and a bigger squat, amazing. Pretty much the best variation in terms of pure knee flexion. So stick at it as a back off set. It makes a ton of sense. And since the day is minimalistic in nature, you didn't do the deference and the movement of set that we saw on Monday. It follows the knee flexion immediately. We'll see why that might be a problem. You follow that with leg press. And I'm going to tell you that if you have the ability to produce meaningful work on a leg press after your a 3x3 plus a 3x8 to 12, it means that you didn't go high intensity enough on the first two. You've already done 2 movements for the quads. You don't need the leg press. This is overkill. This is junk volume. I don't even need to know about your muscular endurance to know its junk volume. This is an amount of set multiplication focused on the same muscle group that is just too high at this point, especially with the ability you should have on the squat to move mass and weight, which also shows me, in my opinion, that you must be sandbagging a bit on this 3x3, which is why I want you to switch to normal squats. Ditch the leg press. After that, you do hanging leg raises, superset with hyper extensions to failure. That's great. Before I get to that, it's okay to have a knee flexion based lower body. It's okay. But it cannot just be knee flexion. Just like you would never have a day where you only do horizontal press or a day where you only do vertical press, it's not balanced. And the issue is that you might be fine now, but you're going to create an imbalance in your leg where your quad is going to take over. And take it from me, I did that, I ended up with knee issues. So by trying to focus on growing your hams, your quads, you're going to end up in a situation where you will be unable to do so because you tried to hammer them too much. Add a knee flexion. And I understand in your situation that the actual loading of the squat might have tired your lower back. So what I would say is, if you want to do something with a machine, replace the leg press and do a lying leg curl. Same rep range, 6 sets, because plus you did 6 sets. 6 sets of 8 to 12, that's going to kill your hamstrings, it's going to balance it out. I see, and I just realized now that the leg press was 6 sets. Junk volume 101, really ditch that, it's useless. And the good thing if you do the leg curl too is that, guess what goes really well with a leg curl superset? Hanging leg raises. And after that, the hyperextensions you might say doesn't really fit with the leg curls because the hamstrings will be tired. So instead of a giant set, you can do a superset of leg press, hanging leg raises. For 6 sets, your abs and glutes and hammers are going to be killed. And then you can do hyperextensions to failure, superset with some forearm isolation, some shrugs, some calves work that I don't see in the program that would fit exceptionally well here. On Wednesday, you rest and you will need that rest. On Thursday, you do upper, same as the upper on Monday. Okay, this is an issue because your upper on Monday is already minimalistic and it lacks variations. And now you're telling me that you repeat that twice in the week. That is not good. I'm not telling you to completely modify the type of uppers you do, but if you're going to have Monday and Thursday be the same, at least do the modifications I told you to do on the Monday. And also keep an open mind for variations and for a different type of upper, because you have no direct bicep work on your upper. You have minimal long head of the tricep work. You have no forearm isolation. The upper back work is extremely skewed towards vertical pulls. All of that are going to be weaknesses down the line that you can fix right now if you create a secondary type of upper days. So you have the chance to do that for the Thursday. You can, of course, still focus on the bench, that's not an issue. But keep in mind that you can't just repeat the same thing again and again, that's how you plateau. You can also implement new rep ranges, because apparently you do the exact same thing, but a bunch of new rep ranges for the same exercises would help you a lot. Maybe do a 5x3, maybe do an evolving rep range on one of the other day for the bench, etc., etc. You get the gist. If you have a question, let me know in the comment, but make modifications on that because I can tell you that this is a plateau in the making. And then on your Friday, a lower day that is hip hinge based, where you start with a deadlift, 3x3, excellent rep range for the deadlift. I personally love it, especially for back offsets. Deadlift after that, so as the back offset, 3 sets of 6, that's starting to be high volume for the deadlift. If you can handle it, by all means do it, but it is high volume. The issue I have with this is that following that, you do Romanian deadlifts, 3 sets of 8 to 12. That's a lot of hip hinges. Plus, it's the exact same style as a deadlift, unless you change the grip for some reason. I would encourage you to just do a deadlift 3x3 and then the RDLs. Because I do think that that deadlift back offset you have sandwiched in the middle is not really doing as much as you think it is for yourself. And I say that because, again, you fall into the same pitfall that you did on your first lower day where you do only hip hinges, and that, again, is not balanced. I want to see a knee flexion in there. And guess what? Your leg presses that you love so much, they actually fit there. Because if you do them properly, they're going to save the lower back. If you do them properly, a lot of people actually kill their lower backs on presses. And you can just do them after the RDLs or even after the deadlift. If you want to keep implementing that technique you did on Monday, you can do deadlift, leg press, then RDLs. That's fine by me. It wasn't really doable with the Tuesday session because doing post squat, then leg curls, then post squats again, you'll just be cold by the time you start again. And plus, a lot of people don't know that, but pre-fatiguing the hamstring can lead to foam and injuries on the squat. So I avoided that. But for the deadlift, it's fine because deadlift followed by knee flexion followed by RDL is going to be okay because the RDL is a negative focused movement and it has an exceptionally low injury rate if you do them properly. After that, I see leg curls. If you want to do leg curls, you can, but I don't encourage you to do them because your hamstrings should be cooked. It's the same logic as with the Tuesday. You can, however, do more ab work, hanging leg raises to decompress the spine. It's always great. You can do more calves if you want. Shrugs would go great on that day. I don't see you do any shrugs for the upper back, etc. And so that is going to be pretty much that, because the Saturday and Sunday are rest days. Overall, you've seen that I'm not against the program, but I'm against the minimalistic approach surrounding the program. And I also have an issue because a lot of body parts are not represented. You don't really isolate a lot of muscles, like the real delts, for example, which down the line can create imbalances in terms of physique and performances. So you need to take care of that. So I pretty much, I'm done for this review. If you have any questions, let me know. Understand also that the cable movements that you do on upper days are not limited to upper days. You can do them on lower days as well. I have a minimalistic approach for lower days because squats and deadlifts take care of the most and the biggest portion of the muscles, but it's also a chance because you get to slap extra stuff on those days and it saves time overall. So, thank you for watching. If you have a question again, Montana, I will pin your comment. Have a good day.